I'd like to start off by thanking everyone for coming out tonight. This is the Patch 2012 Voice of the Voter debate. The questions that we'll be asking the candidates tonight were questions submitted by readers, and we used their suggestions to formulate these questions. First, I'd like to thank the folks at Eno Hall for helping us get this set up tonight. Also the folks at SCTV who will be broadcasting this debate within the next week or so. So you'll be able to find that online or on SCTV. So the format, just to knock this out real quick, each candidate will have a minute and a half as an intro. They will be able to tell you a little bit about themselves, their background and platform. Following the intro portion, we'll move right into the debate portion. Each candidate will have a minute to answer the same question. Each candidate will be asked the same questions, and if needed, we will allow 30 seconds of rebuttal time for each question. With that, I guess we will get started. I'd like to first introduce the candidates for 16th District State Representative. We have Mr. Bob Kalechman.
Good evening.
We have John Hampton.
Good evening.
And Charity Folk.
Good evening.
Good evening to all of you. And Mr. Kalechman, why don't we start off with you? We will give you a minute and a half to introduce yourself to the residents of Simsbury.
I would like to thank the Simsbury citizens for and the Patch for inviting me to participate in this debate. The first, and I hope there'll be a minimum of 3 others, but we'll wait and see what happens. However, before I get to my statement, I'd like to mention this to the audience. I feel very uncomfortable with having the 2 political chairmen, both the Republican chairman and the Democratic Party chairman, being moderators for this debate. They both have a dog in the fight, and I think it's not proper for them to be a moderator. That the moderator should be, as they have been in the past, a political person. A politico. That's what it should be. And I strongly feel that the citizens of Simsbury, the people in this campaign, are being left out. This just points out the public that both party candidates
30 seconds.
Are self-serving and put their party first and the public be damned. And that's why we're in the situation we are today. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kalechman. Okay, John?
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thanks to everyone who put together tonight's debate. I ask for your vote on November 6th because this is a critical election for Simsbury, and I believe that I'm the right person to carry on State Representative Linda Schofield's excellent representation at the state capitol. I am running because as a native of Simsbury, I love this town and have a unique understanding of Simsbury's needs after dedicating 15 years as a volunteer, the last 9 years as a selectman. I've worked at the Capitol and ready to go to work on day 1 to introduce bills on January 18th for Simsbury's future. I'm the only candidate with a proven record in government, a proven record of fiscal conservatism. I am ready to go on day 1. I'm ready to cut spending. As a selectman, I voted for 0 increased budgets for the last 3 years while preserving town programs and services.
30 seconds.
And with a state deficit of $27 million, they could use some help. I'm ready to draft legislation improving the lives of senior citizens. I've done that in Simsbury, initiating senior tax relief that allows seniors to stay in their homes. And I'm ready to protect our environment. As the founder of the Clean Energy Task Force, I'm the only candidate endorsed by the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters. You know where I stand on the issues because I've been there for Simsbury, and I'll be there for Simsbury at the state capitol. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hampton. One moment, Charity.
go?
Sure.
I want to thank Jeff Brush and Patch for hosting tonight's debate. Thank you to Sean Askham and Jeff Tyndall for agreeing to moderate, and good evening to my opponents who are here this evening. A year ago, I made up my mind to run for public office because I was mad and upset at the way the state was being run. And despite the largest tax increase in the state's history and a call for shared sacrifice, our fiscal house is still not in order. I am a wife and a mother and have worked full-time for the past 20 years for the Chamber of Commerce. I've lived in Simsbury since 1983 and raised 2 daughters through the very fine Simsbury school system. I pay my taxes, I contribute to my community, and I balance my own budget. I am concerned for Simsbury's future and concerned at our dependence on property tax and the burden not only on families, but our growing senior population. I'm proud to live in a country where we can agree to disagree and have meaningful discourse. This is how I've managed my 20 years in the Simsbury Chamber, facilitating debate and compromise to find solutions to satisfy a very diverse membership. This philosophy appears to be non-existent in Hartford. We deserve better from our state government, and there needs to be a cultural change. I am the candidate with over 20 years of running a small business, managing budgets, staff, working for hundreds of member companies who are my customers. Under my management, the Simsbury Chamber is fiscally sound and a respected, proven leader of chambers in the Hartford region. I'm running because I care about our future, because I am qualified, and because I decided not to talk about the changes that should be made, but want to take part in those changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to each of you. Now we will jump right into the question portion. Once again, these are questions that were submitted by readers, and we took those questions into consideration and used that to generate our list. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond, and then after each candidate has taken their 1 minute of time, if extra time is needed, each candidate can have 30 seconds of additional time. So we will start the first question for Mr. Kalechman. The question is, to what extent does a newly elected state representative impact decisions at the state legislature?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Sure. To what extent does a newly elected state representative impact decisions at the state legislature?
Well, usually, and I like to recognize Ms. Schofield, the present state representative, and wish her well in her whatever she decides to do now that she's retiring from the political scene. To answer your question, when a freshman representative goes to the State House for the first time, they are more or less brought in, and depending where they sit with the speaker makes all the appointments. And they sit with him, they chat, and he tells them he asks them what they want, and they tell him what they would like to have, and then he more or less assigns the committees. If he feels the representative has
time,
put
Mr.
on
Kalechman.
the wall, he could, because he has the authority to do it. He could make him vice chairman, or he could make him chairman. So whatever they say this evening, I'll conclude, whatever they say this evening, this won't be done by them or by the voters. This is going to be done by the majority.
Thank you, Mr. Kalechman.
Majority speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The same question goes to John Hampton, and I will repeat the question. To what extent does a newly elected state representative impact decisions at the state legislature?
Well, I think if you're a good state representative, you can get started right off the bat. I do go into the job knowing the whole legislative process, how a bill becomes a law. I worked at the state capitol for 4 years under Democratic leadership. I wrote bills. I drafted legislation, I drafted testimony, wrote speeches, answered constituent concerns. There's a learning curve, but obviously I have the experience as a current elected official to get the job done, to learn the ropes. I also have a lot of great relationships at the Capitol already established, and I'm ready to go on day one with all the experience I've had in town government. Our first priority has to be attacking the growing deficit, projected deficit of $27 million, and we have to set the table to create jobs and restore the economy. And whatever committees I'm assigned, I'll take them on with, embrace them fully and take them on with great compassion and enthusiasm.
Thank you. Okay, and once again, same question to you, Charity. To what extent does a newly elected state representative impact decisions at the state legislature?
I've had 20 years of experience working in the Chamber of Commerce and our Government Affairs Committee. Throughout those years, we have worked closely with our state legislators. We've met with them regularly. We've hosted seminars and debates. We have reached out to them. I have worked with the town government on regulations, legislation. So I feel that I have a good relationship now with some of our state legislators and the town boards and commissions, so that I feel like I have a background and understand what would be needed of a freshman legislator in terms of consensus building, reaching out to my colleagues, looking for direction. I think I embrace new challenges. I'm up to the task, and I think that that's part of who I am, and I think I'm a proven leader in the sense that I would reach out and look for advice and consent, and I'm there for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And like I said, all candidates are allowed 30 additional seconds if you feel that you would like to rebut or have anything additional you'd like to say.
My opponent, Mr. Hampton, he mentioned that he lowered the taxes, or he was more or less very active in the tax budget for Simsbury. If my memory serves me correctly, Simsbury raised the taxes. The taxes were raised on the property owners. And he sat on that committee. And here again, what should be pointed out here is we have 5,158 Republicans in town, registered voters.
Thank you, Mr. Kalechman.
We have 4,624, let me make my point. We have 4,624 Democrats.
Okay,
unaffiliated voters are 5,610.
Mr. Kalechman, thank you. We are on a tight schedule tonight, so we do have a second debate. So I'd like to allow anyone else some additional time.
Thank you. And in addition to my government experience and working at the Capitol, knowing what the committees are, when the legislative deadlines are, in addition to that, I've already have a constituency that I've worked with over the years. I've addressed senior issues. I've addressed environmental issues. I've addressed issues related to small businesses. I've cut spending. I've addressed pension reform. So I go in more ready than any of my other fellow candidates, ready to hit the job on day one, ready to lead and ready to represent the residents of Simsbury.
I have no doubt that on day one I would be ready to represent Simsbury. Thank
you. Okay, thank you.
My turn.
I'd like to pass the next question along to Sean Askham.
All right, and this question, John, will start with you. So as a new member of the legislature, how would you shepherd a bill representing your constituents through both houses and onto the governor's desk for signature?
Well, it's a long, convoluted process. It's like hot dogs being made. You don't want to see how they're made, but it's real-life debate bloopers. It starts, a legislator can go in with an idea for themselves or from a constituent, and it starts where they submit the bills. Legislative bills have to be submitted by January 18th, and the bill might be an environmental bill, it might be an education bill. They do get started through the committee process. There's a variety of committees that they have to go through. If it's an environmental bill, it goes through environment. If it has a fiscal impact, it goes to finance and appropriations. Sometimes the committee process can be long and arduous, and there's public hearings on the bills. Once the bills can make it out of committee or don't make it out of committee, they go up for fiscal analysis. They go up to the Legislative Commissioner's office to be analyzed, and then it needs to go to the House and the Senate, or both, for approval, and if it for ultimate signature by the governor.
Thank you.
All right, Charity, we'll move to you next.
As a freshman legislator, I think I have some kind of reality check that for me to bring a bill all the way through to the governor's signature would be, be a wonderful opportunity. I'm not sure that in reality I could do that by myself. So as a consensus builder and somebody who reaches out and has, for my 20 years experience at the chamber, I would look to my fellow legislators to help me shepherd the bill through, perhaps reaching out to some of my senior legislators to help me co-sponsor, to help me, as John said, it's a convoluted, it's a large process. I look to my constituency to reach out to me to tell me what's important to them and what bill they feel that I need to bring forward, which that's my job. That's what I would do as a state legislature. But I obviously, as a freshman, would look for help and guidance from my senior legislators. Thank you.
Mr. Kalechman, I'll repeat the question if you'd like.
What we've neglected to mention here is a very important step: the caucus. You don't do anything without your party caucus. You have to go to the chairman of the caucus and speak to him. And if he wants to put it on the agenda, you're on the agenda. If he says, not this year, John, forget it. So I'm a realist. I feel that what you have to do once you get to the State House, you have to become a diplomat. And you have to be interviewed, and you have to spend a lot of time with the co-chairman and the chairman of both the committees, and you also have to spend a lot of time with the opposition. Because in my case, unless there's a real turnover in the State House, the Democrats for 40 years have controlled the State House, and that's why we're in the position we are today.
Thank you.
We have a $143 million deficit that nobody hasn't mentioned yet.
Thank you, Mr. Kalechman.
You're welcome.
Can I have a follow-up?
Oh, sure.
Linda Schofield's here tonight. She's a great example of somebody who was elected and hit the ground running. I think in her first year, she authored or sponsored close to 10 or 12 bills. You can get there, and if you know the process, there's actually a software on how to create a bill. There's deadlines set up, there's committee deadlines, there's what's called JF deadlines when bills are voted out of committee. So it helps to go in knowing the process and to work within the legislature, work with committee members, work with both sides of the aisle, knowing folks in the governor's office, knowing folks in all branches of office to help shepherd that bill through the process.
Thank you.
After Ms. Charity, Ms. Volk replies, could I have 30 seconds to rebut Mr. Hampton?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I will give my 30 seconds to Mr. Kalechman.
Okay, we'll hold that to 30 seconds.
He's mentioned our representative, right? He hasn't mentioned that the representative is not a freshman. If she decided to return to the House, she'd be running for her 4th term. So she's not a freshman. She's in the line of play. In other words, she's a player now. She's not a freshman. And for some reason or other, to try to impress you people with their political connections, it doesn't work. Now, Mr. Hampton.
Thank you, Mr. Kalechman.
And I'll be perfectly honest, When he first started out his campaign, I was one
Mr.
of the
Kalechman.
writers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we will pass the microphone down to Jeff Tyndall, who's going to ask the next question.
Thanks. First, we go to Charity. Party or people? In what way will you separate yourself from the standard issues held by your party? Or do you see yourself as 100% party aligned?
As most of you, or some of you know, my time at the Chamber of Commerce, we were nonpartisan business association where party affiliation had no part in how we managed our affairs at the Chamber of Commerce. It was bipartisan, come in, work out the issues, and compromise debate to handle any of the issues that were before us. And because of that, I felt that it was important at that time to be an independent, to register as an independent as part of my position at the Simsbury Chamber of Commerce. I understand that there are over 5,300 independent voters in the town of Simsbury. They're the largest voting group. I know that they choose the best person for the job, and I understand that.
Thank you,
With
Charity.
that said,
That's time.
I'm
We
going
can
to
give you
turn
30
it over.
seconds.
Boy, that minute goes fast. I'll be back. I shall return.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Mr. Kalechman.
Well, getting back to what I tried to mention, and I ran out of time, the party registration in Simsbury. The Republicans, 5,158. The Democrats, 4,624. The unaffiliates, 5,610. And there's 69 other parties. And the point I'm trying to make here is that the unaffiliates have no representation. It's the party chairman of both parties. They indicate a course for their party to take at the Capitol. They chart the course. And for the unaffiliates to be not tied in, I think is totally wrong. And I can pledge to you that if I'm elected, that I will go to the unaffiliates. And I suggest that my opponents, if they outpoll me, that they take this to heart and go to the unaffiliates.
Thank you,
They're
Mr.
the number
Kalechman.
one people in Simsbury.
Thank you.
John.
I'm proud to be a Democrat, but I'm a fiscal conservative Democrat. I believe government doesn't have to be big, but it has to be bold. I think of the New Deal and Social Security, what we're desperately hanging on to today. I think of the Great Society and the civil rights legislation that was created under a Democratic administration. I think of the New Frontier and JFK putting a man in space. But at the end of the day, I'm a fiscal conservative, and I'm the only one in this race with a proven fiscally conservative record in town governments. A proven record of cutting budgets, a proven record of addressing pension reform, which is a huge problem in government right now, a proven record of streamlining services through regionalization and grant opportunities. So while I embrace my Democratic Party, Simsbury Democrats are conservative when it comes to fiscal restraint and fiscal spending, and we're proud of that record, and I'll bring that record to Hartford in the state capitol in all that I do.
Thank you. Would anyone like additional time?
What I wanted to finish was, my core values are Republican. I was unhappy with the way the state was going and felt strongly enough that I needed to step out of my comfort zone at the chamber and declare my Republican core values. I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe in less government. I believe in equal opportunity, not equal outcome. And I am a Republican at heart, but I would be representing the people of the town of Simsbury, all the people.
Thank you. Does anyone else
Yes,
require time?
I'd like to make a brief comment. Here again, my Democratic opponent, he mentions that he's a fiscal conservative, but he supports the FDR programs. Now, how can you say you're fiscal responsible when you supported all the FDR programs? When our own Cabot Lodge and Cabot Lodge from Massachusetts came down and were deathly against the FDR administration. And I give all due to FDR. I'm a product of the Depression. So I give him his due. I was born and my dad couldn't pay the hospital.
Thank you, Mr.
The reason being that the banks were closed and they wouldn't honor his check. So I'm a product.
Thank you, Mr. Kalechman. Okay, we will move on to the next question, and we will start with you, Mr. Kalechman.
John, did you want 30 seconds?
Oh, you didn't either? I'm sorry.
I'm good.
Did you want 30 seconds?
No, I was just going to say, I mentioned FDR as an example of an advocate for a program like Social Security that I don't think anyone wants to see dismantled for our seniors and our future generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. With that, we will move on to our next question. Mr. Kalechman, assuming that you have reviewed votes made by Linda Schofield in the past year, with what, if any, might you have voted differently?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Assuming that you have reviewed votes made by Linda Schofield in the past year, with what, if any, might you have voted differently?
I think the first thing I would have voted differently on would have been the land conveyance bill. And let's go back and cover it, if you remember. There was a situation on the Connecticut River where we had Connecticut River waterfront property that was going to be traded for stump land. And it went through the House and it was buried in the conveyance bill, and it passed. And at that time, not only Ms. Schofield, but our Democratic representative running for Congress, Ms. Estes, supported this swap. Now, it went to the Senate, and though it was opposed by the Republicans in the Senate, it was passed in the Senate. And it went to the desk of our governor, Governor Malloy, and he signed it. And there was such an outcry from the public that eventually it passed, but in the appraisal of the land, the company that wanted to swap the land all of a sudden was embarrassed because the land was priceless and they couldn't pay the tab.
Thank you, Mr. Kalechman. Okay. Mr. Hampton, that same question. Assuming that you have reviewed votes made by Linda Schofield in the past year, with what, if any, might you have voted differently?
Well, since she's here tonight, I better say something nice. And Linda Schofield has done a wonderful job as our state representative for 3 terms. And all of her bills, whether they're on health care or recycling or related to the budget, have been fair and effective and strong. What's great about Linda is she's a fiscal conservative, fair-minded. She listens to all her constituents. She's deeply connected to the community. And she often votes against her party. And it's a difficult thing to do when you're at the legislature. But I will not have difficulty doing that, voting against my party, voting against the leadership of the party. And that's something you have to be ready for when you are at the state capitals, the pressure of your leadership, pressure from colleagues. But my first commitment is to my constituents and weighing their concerns, weighing their opinions first. And that's what Linda did, and that's what I'll do at the state capitol.
Thank you. And moving along, Mrs. Folk, same question. Assuming that you have reviewed votes made by Linda Schofield in the past year, with what, if any, might you have voted differently?
First of all, I want to reiterate that we admire and respect Linda Schofield. I've known her a long time, especially through the Chamber of Commerce. Having knocked on doors in the town of Simsbury, I can tell you that Linda will be missed, and shout out to you, Linda. I would not have voted in favor of the Jackson Labs. I think we would have, I would have voted no on that. I'm not sure that that was the right direction for the state of Connecticut, especially with facing some of our some of the serious concerns we have on meeting our budget and some of the obligations we have. So we would have disagreed on that. Ms. Schofield voted for it, and I would have voted against it. There's a healthcare partnership bill allowing the private businesses to be a part of the state healthcare system. I would not have voted in favor of that. Ms. Schofield did vote in favor of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would either Mr. Kalechman, would you like an additional 30 seconds?
The question, if I could recall, was, do you agree with the way Ms. Schofield has voted? And I answered it truthfully and to the point. My Democratic opponent, he has to get in the attaboys. It's not a question as to Mrs. Schofield. She's a very likable person. We all like her. But she's a Democrat, and she's a tax and spend. And the Democratic Party for 40 years has put this state with a $143 million deficit after they raised taxes, and they continue to raise taxes, and they're going to raise taxes again. So the question is not her integrity. She's a good person.
Thank you, Mr. Kalechman.
The question is, do you agree with the way she voted? And my answer was I don't. And that's the answer that Ms. Folk gave. And why
Thank you, Mr. Kalechman.
To twist it, as Democrats try to do, is beyond me. Don't believe it. Let's get back to earth.
Mr. Kalechman, thank you.
You're welcome.
John, would you like additional time?
No, thank you.
Okay. No? Okay. Then we will move on to the next question.
All right, it'll come as no surprise. I'm going to ask a financial question. Are the state's fiscal problems, this is for John, are the state's fiscal problems the result of overspending or because of shortfalls in revenue?
Spending. We're spending more than we're taking in, out of control spending. I like to say Connecticut doesn't have a spending problem, it has a pension problem. A lot of our liabilities are pension related, so we desperately need pension reform. We need to streamline our government. We've done it in Simsbury. Why can't we do it at the state level? We can shrink government, consolidate agencies. We've already started to do that. We do a lot through regionalization in Simsbury. Simsbury definitely, the state definitely has a spending problem, and we can't keep taxing our way out of that problem.
Thank you.
Charity, same question. The state's fiscal problem, are the state fiscal problems the result of overspending or because of shortfalls in revenue?
I clearly think it's a spending problem. You know, despite the largest tax increase in the state's history, you know, we still don't have our fiscal house in order. We had $1.8 billion in tax increases. We've increased our sales tax. We've increased sales tax on products and services, on our corporation tax. The revenues are coming in, but I'm very disappointed with the way that the state is spending our money. And I think, you know, our state needs to go into triage. I think it's in a very critical time. I think we need to sort of stop the bleeding, stop the spending, stop doing everything that just put a halt on where we are right now, and deal with the problems of our state budget that is just absolutely out of control. I don't think that we can get on and do much of anything else until we handle that problem. We cannot ignore it any longer, and as a freshman senator, excuse me, sorry Kevin, as a freshman representative, we're going to be faced with the budget, and that's where we all need to, you know, put our energies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kalechman, same question. Are the state's financial problems the result of overspending or because of shortfalls in revenue?
Here again, my opponent, the Democrat, the workman's party. The first things out of his mouth is he's going after the pensions. People have devoted 20, 30, 35 years of their lives and their family lives to be state employees. And why should they be the whipping boy? You know, what John hasn't mentioned here, and he tells you he has all the experience, what he doesn't tell you is they're all Democratic appointments. Every job he's had in the State House has been a Democratic appointment. It wasn't because of his ability. It was because he was a member of the party, and he was in the right place at the right time. I know how things work. You know, I haven't fallen off a turnip truck. I spent a lot of time at the state capitol. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is, you know, let's get to the issues here. Let's get to the issue. Let's put aside this myth.
Thank you, Mr. Kalechman.
Thank you.
John?
On the issue of pension reform, we've started to address it in Simsbury, and it's a huge issue. And we're steering toward a more defined benefit program. It's not that we don't appreciate our employees or state employees or town employees, but Simsbury was able to work across the table with our employees to work on give-backs that worked for everybody. We all want our workers, and everybody should have a healthy pension. But I'm more worried about our constituents' pensions and our constituents' future to be fair and equitable. Thank you.
Charity?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Mr. Kalechman?
One comment, if I may, is here again he's talking about adjusting pensions. How about the commissioners that are appointed by the governor that come in and they work for 4 years and they end up with a pension? How about Jackson Lab, who we threw all that money at him and to hire 40 people? Why didn't you cut that, John? Why go after the state employee? That's your asset, the state employees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Charity, it's no secret Simsbury currently receives less ECS funding than we send to Hartford each year. In the current economic climate, how do you plan on preserving and enhancing Simsbury's share of the ECS pool?
The education cost-sharing formula, I believe, needs to be addressed to look at the amount of funding that Simsbury is receiving at this time. I think that my job as a state representative would be to, get to Hartford and fight for every dollar and every fair share of Simsbury's education funding. To say that I can, wave the magic wand and bring more dollars to Simsbury, I can't promise you that, but I could promise you that I would look into the formula that seems to be, what I'm hearing, it needs to be addressed, and to fight for every single dollar that Simsbury is entitled to. That would be my job, and I would look forward to working for Simsbury and making sure. I had children who went through the school system, and I'm there to fight for it, believe me.
Mr. Kalechman, how would you preserve our ECS funding?
Here again, why use the teachers as whipping posts? They're an asset. They're our most valuable asset that we have. Why should we go after the teachers? And what we've done is what the governor has done. He's moved all the chairs around on the Titanic. And that's the first thing he's gone after are the school teachers. And he's trying to work that around, and he's blaming they're not capable, and we want to bring in where you're gonna more or less judge them, and if they don't live up to standards, you're gonna fire them, because now teachers have tenure, and it's rightly so, they should have tenure. They devoted their life to educate our children. So, he's talking about addressing issues, but they're not addressing the issues that have to be addressed. And that's all they're doing, in my opinion, down at that State House. They're moving the chairs around on a Titanic, and the Titanic's going down. And believe me, you don't want to go down in cold water. You have like 30 seconds and you're done.
Thank you. Does anyone need additional time for that question?
No, John has one.
John's
John,
got
the question's on ECS
I'm
funding.
jumping ahead here.
John, the question's on ECS funding.
Yes.
We send more to Hartford than we receive. How would you enhance and
Thank you.
bring that money back, maximize that money?
The ECS grant program remains significantly underfunded, and it's affecting our property tax owners the most, causing the most burden. And we're not meeting the constitutional goal of ensuring equal access to education and enhancing our competitiveness economically. So we need to correct the ECS grant. The goals of that grant was equity, accuracy, and transparency. And this is intrinsically entwined with the state of our economy. We need to address this. I think we should require a common chart of accounts for reporting to all municipalities and school districts. But this is a very important goal for the next state representative. But as their next state representative, there are other areas I'd like to focus on related to education. There's pre-K, funding for universal pre-K, making sure our parents have the most choice in their educational opportunities, and supporting our teachers.
Thank you. And now I'll ask again, does anyone need additional time for that question? Everyone's all set?
I'd like to,
okay.
Does he need to go?
Bob? Mr. Kalechman, do you need additional time?
No, I just briefly, I sat here with Ms. Schofield 2 years ago, and the education in question came up, and each candidate had the same thing. They were going to go and address education. We haven't had any change down there. Nobody's addressed anything. It's all come out of the governor's office. I haven't seen any legislation from the State House floor. So getting back to what I originally said, you take your instructions from the speaker. He tells you what you're going to discuss and what you're not going to discuss. And that's the only way it gets onto the floor.
Thank you.
Could I?
Would you like additional time?
Yeah.
Sure. Whenever you're ready.
Good to go. I just want to add that I think it's really important that we stop our teacher bashing. Teachers are really important to our children's welfare, and our students' education is tied to the success of our economy and the future of our economy. And we need to have a fair evaluation process for our teachers, but we also need to cultivate the best and the brightest for some of our high-achieving students to become teachers. It is indeed a noble profession.
Thank you.
I'm all set.
All set.
If I may.
Actually, we're going to move.
I just want to take 15 seconds, if I may, exercise my privilege.
I'll give him my 15.
Okay. That works.
I have a position paper, and I've taken positions. And if you go to my position paper, I have a position that I took. I support legislation protecting municipal employees. Teachers are included in that. Position in the workplace and their retirement pensions. I have a position paper on it. I haven't seen any position paper from my opponents.
Okay. Thank you. Now we are going to move into the final portion of this first half of the program. And each candidate will be given 2 minutes to summarize your platforms. So we'll begin again with Mr. Kalechman, and then we'll move through.
Here again, I'd like to thank the Simsbury Patch for arranging this debate. And here again, you've listened to us. You will be addressed by my two-party opponents, who will try to explain and point blame to the other party. At this time, let me point out that both the Republican and the Democrats have made this budget shortfall, and we now pay the highest taxes in the state. We pay the highest taxes. And incidentally, I was looking the other day at some notes I made. Jody Rell, our governor, had a deficit of $1 $1.43 million. The new party, the new administration has gone in and they've raised taxes, they've raised fees, they've raised everything, and we still have a $145 million deficit. Now, you know, how long are we going to allow the administration to beat us to death? How much taxes can you pay? We have businessmen here, and you get them and you talk to them, and it's tax on tax on tax. It has to stop. And the only way we're going to stop it, and nobody wants to go there, you have to stop the hemorrhaging in the cities. Hartford, Waterbury, Bridgeport, Stamford. It's like taking the money down, you ship it in, and they burn it in the street, and they're back for more. And if you don't stop that, then you're never going to stop the deficit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hampton.
You ready to go?
Ready when you are.
I ask for your vote on November 6th so I can be Simsbury's voice at the state capitol and continue to be a strong advocate for Simsbury. The next 2 years will be difficult ones for the state and for Simsbury. We need to cut spending, maintain Simsbury's excellent educational system by addressing education funding, and retain and grow jobs. The next state representative needs to be ready on day one to introduce bills and testify on legislation within days of being sworn in. Because of my experience as a selectman and a legislative staffer at the Capitol, I understand the legislative process, and I'm ready to take over from where our wonderful state representative left off. Simsbury deserves to have a full-time state representative with a proven record of cutting budgets, supporting regional cooperation, with experience working with a diverse group of constituents, seniors, parents, students, teachers, veterans, business leaders, government leaders. I grew up in this town, went to school here, and have volunteered thousands of hours over the past 15 years as a volunteer on a variety of boards and commissions, most recently as a selectman and deputy first selectman, all because of my deep love and commitment for this community. I'm ready to take that experience and make it work for Simsbury at the state capitol. I will reduce costs at the state level just like I have here in Simsbury, cutting costs while finding creative ways to provide services. I will fight for funding to support our educational system, work to streamline burdensome regulations and grow jobs, and honor our commitment to our seniors and to our veterans. I've always been there for the people of Simsbury. Now I'm asking you to be there for me and vote for me on November 6th. Thank you all for your support, and thank you again to the Patch and to our moderators and SCTV for having this opportunity for us to present our candidacy, and to my Republican opponents for participating. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Connecticut has had a negative job growth over the past 20 years. We are now ranked 45th among the worst states to do business. We are 45th in economic competitiveness. We're one of the least business-friendly states in the nation. We have one of the second highest gas taxes. The cost of doing business, we're the 5th highest in the country. We have $49 billion in unfunded pension mandates. Each one of us in the state of Connecticut owes $49,000. That's per person in the state of Connecticut. The history of these bullets that I've given you has been from a democratically controlled legislature. I think it's time that we make some significant change in the way our legislature is comprised. I think it is it's time to bring in more balance in our state legislature. The state is not meeting its obligations. Our communities are relying too much on property tax. There's a fear that the state will pass on the cost of these unfunded mandates. We are in very serious trouble. I am running because I care about our future, because I am qualified with over 20 years of business experience. I am a taxpayer, a homeowner, a wife, a mother, and I do not intend to be a full-time career politician. I want to be part of change in Hartford. I want to get our fiscal house in order, promote compromise and debate, and be a champion for business. And I want your vote on November 6th. I want to thank Patch, Jeff, Sean, Jeff. I want to thank SCTV, and a good evening to my opponents. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. That concludes the first half of our debate this evening. We're going to take a short 2 or 3 minute break.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.